Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking an incredibly provocative relationship dynamic that's going to challenge literally everything we've been taught about romance. Seriously, we're looking at a deeply ingrained human behavior that forces us to question the very foundation of why people actually stay together. Let's dive right into the phenomenon of the good enough partner. Hearing that some people actively, consciously choose pragmatic calculation over blinding love, well, it's an absolute shock to the system. The source material highlights this exact quote, the sheer disbelief that people actually pick a partner just because they are good enough. It completely shook the author's worldview. Because think about it, it's a massive contradiction to the romantic fairy tale we're all spoon-fed from childhood, right? The whole idea that relationships must be born out of deep, undeniable passion and an unmistakable spark. So hearing that someone intentionally selects a partner based on them just being, sufficient physically or materially, it can initially sound incredibly cold, calculating, and honestly, maybe even a little bit sad. Which brings us to the initial shock of good enough. But when you really deconstruct it, this isn't actually about cold-heartedness or malice, not at all. As our source outlines, it's essentially a survival mechanism. It's a way to try and control life's wild unpredictability. Psychologists sometimes call this settling. People who choose a good enough partner are usually just trying to banish the chaos and the sheer vulnerability that comes with genuine deep emotions. They're building their lives on hard certainties instead of the totally unpredictable terrain of authentic connection. It's a completely different paradigm for building a life together. So how does this actually work in practice? It turns into a highly rational checklist. It's honestly a lot like evaluating a corporate merger. Financially, the assessment is all about economic stability, covering fixed costs, ensuring future security, and just living comfortably. Physically, it's way less about all-consuming, fiery attraction and way more about health, presentation, and whether the person is structurally suitable to start a family with. And socially, it's about seamless integration, finding someone who slots perfectly into your existing friend groups and family structures, bringing absolutely zero heavy emotional baggage. The ultimate goal here is to create a living situation with zero drama and maximum predictability. That naturally leads to a huge question. Why do people actually choose this over passion? The source outlines a few universal drivers that push people toward this intensely pragmatic choice. Basically, the longing for internal peace simply outweighs the desire for romantic fireworks. For instance, if you've been deeply hurt by a highly passionate but super unstable relationship in the past, you might consciously just choose safety. Makes sense, right? Then you factor in the biological clock or the immense pressure to hit specific life goals, and sometimes rationality just takes over. Add in that massive, overwhelming societal fear of ending up alone. As people get older, they often adjust their expectations, realizing the perfect partner myth doesn't exist, and they opt for the best available option to build a solid foundation of friendship and respect. Now, let's break this down by looking at the female dynamic specifically. The source maps out a very specific and surprisingly common trajectory for women. In the early stage, the biological reality of wanting a family acts as a massive catalyst. The focus aggressively shifts from finding that perfect, storybook love to finding a suitable, reliable father. And you know what? For a while, in the middle stage, it works beautifully. The system runs efficiently, the house is bought, the kids are raised in a calm, totally functional environment. But here is the hidden trap. Around age 40 or 50, when the external busyness of early parenting and career building starts to fade, an identity crisis almost inevitably emerges. Because the foundation was purely functional, it just doesn't provide the space for authentic personal growth. The woman is left with this hollow feeling, looking around and asking herself, is this all there is to life?
Okay, so what about the other side of the coin? Let's look at the male dynamic.
The stark contrast here is absolutely fascinating. While women are often driven by biological timelines and that deep need for emotional or financial safety after turbulent pasts, men frequently choose this dynamic for completely different reasons. For men, the calculation is often heavily tied to social status, maintaining appearances, and above all, seeking the path of least emotional resistance. They want a partner who fits perfectly into their professional circles, someone who looks the part and requires very little emotional maintenance. By outsourcing all those relational and domestic logistics to a good enough partner, men are suddenly free to channel all their energy into external career ambitions. But building a life entirely on convenience, that comes with a really heavy toll. Because the relationship was chosen for ease rather than deep organic connection, there's a severe lack of true passion and intimacy. Over time, this literally starves them emotionally, leading to a profound emotional numbing. And, according to the source material, this is precisely what triggers that stereotypical, totally explosive midlife crisis. It's a sudden, overwhelming, and often super destructive urge to just feel alive again. It frequently manifests in affairs or making abrupt, chaotic life changes that tear down everything they've built.
Which brings us straight into the hidden trap of this whole setup.
When you take a step back and look at the big picture, the core trap becomes so incredibly obvious. Yes, the bills are paid. Yes, the social appearances are kept up perfectly. The relationship basically operates flawlessly, just like a highly efficient logistics company. But what's critically missing is a space for shared cognitive expansion. There's no safe internal space where both partners feel fully accepted and validated in their raw, authentic selves. So, what happens? They end up just living next to each other, managing life's tasks side by side rather than actually living with each other. The danger here is profound. When the external pillars like financial stability, physical appearance, or social status inevitably change or fall away over time, this perfectly functioning logistics company reveals that it has absolutely no true emotional foundation holding it up.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. Look, it's super easy to judge the good enough relationship from the outside looking in, but our human need for safety and predictability is incredibly powerful. Yet the true cost of avoiding vulnerability is often the loss of real intimacy. I'll leave you with this provocative final thought from the source material to consider about your own definitions of love, resilience, and partnership. When the storms of life inevitably hit, is a purely functional foundation really resistant enough to keep the house standing? Or will the lack of a deeper connection ultimately cause everything to collapse? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.